Hey everyone, before we get into today's post-match reviews that Kyle did a little while ago on the Forward Madison match and the Richmond Kickers match back in early June, I just wanted to hop on here and say I'm alive. I know Kyle has been doing a lot of our videos recently, and I have been kind of lurking in the shadows just due to busyness with life and work outside of the podcast, but really excited to be back and talking again. With that, I just wanted to give you all an update for what this week is going to look like for us. This episode obviously is releasing when it does. We will have a pregame episode for the one Knoxville match on Thursday, a post-match episode this weekend, speaking about the Union Omaha result last week, along with the results and our thoughts on the one Knoxville result this week, and combine those. I think that's our plan moving forward, is just to combine post matches for maybe weeks where there's more than one game in a week. Obviously, with this week, it was the team got a week off, so we kind of took a week off as well. But let us know in the comments if that's something you like the idea of, or don't like and prefer having the single episode post game thoughts. Would be interested to hear that. On top of that, we will be releasing our first player interview episode. I will not ruin the surprise as to who that player is, but that'll hopefully be dropping again next weekend over the 4th, 5th, 6th time frame. I think our goal with these player interviews is to allow for the players to show to you all their personality and maybe who they are as a person, and less focused on performances on the field and tactically driven. Again, if you have any thoughts or opinions on that and what you'd prefer to see, as we want to please you, our loyal listeners, please let us know in the comment section below, DM us on Instagram, so on and so forth. Really excited to have that. Really excited to have hopefully more players on in the coming months. I know we're coming up on halfway through the season, and just excited to build and let you, the listener, get to know these players more outside of the players that are on the soccer field. So with that, we'll kick it over to Kyle to talk about Richmond Kickers match and the Forward Madison destruction.
All right, everybody. Before we get into today's episode, quick shout out to KJO Insurance, the first sponsor of the Pitchside Peregrines podcast. Look, insurance premiums suck, but your coverage doesn't have to. They know Idaho and the Pacific Northwest, and they'll actually find you a deal that makes sense. DM them on Instagram at KJO Insurance with Pitchside, or call 208-883-4800 and tell them Kyle and Elias sent you. All right, let's talk some AC Boise. Playing Richmond Kickers as well as Forward Madison. 2 games this week. A good result against Richmond on Wednesday. A home game. One of our better performances for one half, I would have to say, for sure. And then our worst performance of the season so far, or at least our worst 20 minutes. Because that game we didn't look great in the first half, and then we had a second half from hell. So we'll kind of go over both games and kind of talk through some of the things that occurred this week, the good, bad, and the ugly, because I feel like there's plenty of all of the above for sure. So the first game this week was on Wednesday against the Richmond Kickers. It was a quick turnaround after we had just faced them last week, and so this might have been one of the best first half performances that I've seen in a while. This was the game in which Jake Dengler is still out, so you guys can see on the screen here, with a very, very, very strong lineup. This was something that I think a lot of people were asking for when it comes to Joe Hansen stepping in, with Blake Bodley still out injured, as well as Jake Dengler during this game. So Josh Yarrow had stepped in at the center back, is in the middle of the back three. Jonathan Ricketts maintained his place on the right side of the back three, and Charlie Adams made a return from injury as well, partnering with Philip Mayaka as the double pivot there in the midfield. And Jake Dengler did play in this game, and he played a pivotal role in the second half following Nick Moon's red card. But this was a game in which in my opinion, this was one of the most complete performances AC Boise had in the first half. The first half was phenomenal, in my opinion. We didn't look frantic on the ball. AC Boise sometimes can look a little frantic and a little, I don't want to say panicky per se, but we can get a little impatient for sure. And AC Boise didn't look impatient in the first half. It was a very complete performance. It felt like our passing was crisp. It felt like we were patient when we needed to be patient. It felt like we sped things up when we needed to speed things up. It was interesting to see how Joe Hansen, this was I believe his first start of the year, and not as impactful starting the game as he was coming off the bench in the game before, but he was still very effective. He's not afraid to run at people. He's not afraid to take on defenders one on one. Neither is Nick Moon. Joe Hansen definitely kind of, when he's going forward, he holds the width really well, while Nick Moon likes to cut inside. Obviously, Nick Moon being right-footed, playing on the left, he's going to want to cut inside onto his right foot. But Joe isn't afraid to cut in on his left foot either. He likes to hug the byline, maintain width, and then when he gets to the byline, he likes to keep his options open. Can he cut back on the left, or can he drive and see if he can get across in on his right foot? But that first half was phenomenal. The goal that we scored by Toomey in really early in the first half was not the prettiest. Obviously, it came from kind of one of those. It wasn't the result of a direct pass by a Boise player. I think it had been deflected in the box by a Richmond defender, and so it wasn't the prettiest goals, but it was a goal that was still the result of good setup. It was a really good setup, and we maintained the pressure, as you guys can see here on the left side of the screen. We maintained really decent pressure all throughout the first half. We really didn't let Richmond in the game at all. It was a really strong performance from Dennis, from Charlie Adams, from Joe Hansen looked good, Jonathan Ricketts looked good, Cleaver, everyone had a good game, and then and then towards late in the second half, right after Nick Moon, which I will say it was a great assist by Dennis. He hugged the byline and he was patient. I think a lot of people wanted him to either cross the ball earlier or possibly take a shot, cut in on his left foot, but he stayed patient on the ball. He picked his pass. I think this is a goal that might not have stood in the Premier League per se, because Thomas Among, I've never seen someone his height jump that high. And after each replay, it's like, oh, it definitely looked like he pushed off. But again, it's USL. It wasn't a hard push. No one was complaining on Richmond, that's for sure. And Nick Moon, the benefit of him being as tall as he is, I believe he's about 6', 6'1", which for a wingback is decent height for sure. And he also had a free header, so it was a wonderful header. AC Boise goes 2-1 up, and in all honesty, I think AC Boise, we could have scored 4 or 5. It felt like in that first half, we had a really good performance in that first half with our shots. This is just, if we want to show here, just in the first half of this game, we had 56% possession, 4 big chances, 13 total shots. Their goalkeeper made 5 saves in the first half. So it was a phenomenal first half for AC Boise. Again, we probably should have had, I'd say, 3 goals. So it was disappointing. We had some misses. Their goalkeeper obviously made 5 saves. I would say one of those was, not necessarily world class, but to me definitely should have had a brace in that first half, and I would not have surprised me if we were up 3 or 4-0. And then the moment happened there late in the first half where Nick Moon gets the second yellow and the red card, and Nick, I've heard some rumblings of people saying it wasn't even really a foul because he won the ball. Yes, he did win the ball. However, the follow through is still the follow through, and in soccer you can't really put your studs up that high. So I get the frustration in that it was called a second yellow card and that he was sent off. However, Nick already being on a yellow, maybe he was going for a ball. It was honestly he was trying to make something happen, and it was a mistake at the end of the day. And I'm sure he knows that, in that he was already on a yellow. He connected with the Richmond Kickers goalkeeper's face. Unfortunate, to say the least, in that not only was he then sent off for the rest of the game, and when he'd had a phenomenal game, and then which I think AC Boise named him man of the match, which agree to disagree. That's fine. I would definitely go with Dennis in that game, but AC Boise then down to 10 men without Jake Dengler. It was a scary moment for sure because Jake Dengler was on the bench for this game, but no one really knew if he was really 100% healthy. Obviously, everyone had seen that his injury should have been 6 to 12 week recovery, and he recovers in 3 to 4. So definitely a really quick turnaround for him. So it was interesting to see the second half. There were a couple of really. So there were a couple of substitutions, obviously as the result of the red card. So we had Jake Dengler come on for Johansson. I did feel for Johansson because he didn't play poorly. Again, we tried to facilitate things down his on the right side, and we also had Keegan Euler come on for Toomey. And again, these are both substitutions that made sense because we still needed to maintain the wings, and so Keegan comes on and he's able to do so, and then Jake Dengler as well. He was able to win everything. It felt like he won absolutely everything in the air during this game. So it was a really really impressive performance. Defensively, it showed our determination. It showed our tenacity. It showed that we can get punched and can get back up. This was definitely a good bounce back performance, and we were definitely, obviously, you guys can see from the attack momentum bar here, we were definitely under the gun for the entire second half, and we performed well. We bent and we didn't break. It was a frustrating second half as a fan because we were so promising in the first half, and again we could have been up 3 to 4 to nothing, and so the fact that we then had to just sit back and just be panicked, the term that everyone likes to use in the UK is squeaky bum time, and I felt like we had squeaky bum time for the entire second half, and you can see that Richmond progressively got more and more confident as the game progressed, and they did scare us a couple times, but it was really a great gritty performance in that second half. Jake Dengler did his job. Keegan Euler did his job. We had a few more substitutions. I was surprised. So Musa came on for Charlie in the 60th. That was a little surprising given that Nate Miller knew we were going to be under the gun in that second half, and I was fairly surprised, especially given Charlie just coming back from injury. So that was a little interesting. And then Omar on for Thomas, which again I think that's a natural selection when you're going to be playing counterattacking football. Omar's able to stretch the play a lot more than Thomas. Thomas had a few moments where I'm not sure if Thomas has a prior injury that keeps him from running at full speed, but it seems like there's definitely something going on with his. He had a bit of a hitch in his step, and he's not the fastest. And Omar is very apparently our fastest player, so he's someone who's gonna cause chaos and stretch the play. So he's a great counterattacking option. If you're not gonna have more possession than the other team, he's the best. He's the best person to bring on for sure. And Musa did a good job. Musa did a great job. Again, we played him in that central midfield role, partnering with Phillip, and he's just so good in that he's able to kind of screen the play, almost acting again. He's kind of like a sweeper in front of the back line, kind of trying to clean things up. So we did do a good job of that in the second half. Richmond did get a goal back at about the 52nd, 53rd minute with a really nice outside the box goal. I think this is the first time that Kleewer can be disappointed, possibly. I'm not sure if the shot took a deflection or if he was unsighted, but he did. I think that's one where Jonathan looks back and he thinks he definitely needs to save that. It definitely, at least from the fan perspective on the video, it was well within his range of saving the shot for sure. So that was an interesting one, seeing him not save that shot because again I felt that it was well within his capabilities of saving that. He did make 2 saves in the second half, but again Richmond did what they needed to do to try and get back in the game. They had 80% possession. They had 10 shots. They forced Jonathan into 2 saves. They had a lot of corner kicks. It was interesting in that they still did foul quite a bit, given that they were just shutting down every single counterattack that we even started. So we didn't see the ball in that second half. We had one little moment of possession, it felt like, but that also just Richmond as a whole, they fouled quite a bit with 19 fouls in total. Most of those coming in the second half, trying to stop those counterattacks. But again, I think this was a good game to stop the slide. It was a good game to stop the slide that we had experienced where and we weren't picking up many points, and we had that 5-game stretch or 4-game stretch where we hadn't won in a while since the Monterey Bay game. So it felt like such a good. It's like, oh man, hey, we see the light. This is something that we can rally behind this performance. It was gritty. It showed a lot of heart and determination, and it felt like the fans were behind the team again. So that it felt like going into this weekend again. Forward Madison is obviously a good team. When it comes to points per game, they are performing better than Boise. We're going to Madison, and you're going to go ahead and assume that each team is going to perform better at home. So it was a really good performance, and I felt it was going to give us a lot of momentum going into this weekend's game or last night's game. And a few of you did participate. We always do, how do you guys feel about the game after games? And we had one participant this week, that was Sherry, and so Sherry it's like, hey, great defense. And yeah, Sherry, you're 100% right. We showed a lot of determination on defense in that game, and it was the most, obviously due to circumstances going down to 10 men, Nate Miller had to change things up a little bit. He still kept the same system essentially, just we were playing without an attacking midfielder essentially, because it was then Dennis and Omar playing up top. So, or you could essentially say that Dennis, we just took away the second striker and Dennis moved into midfield. But it was obviously very defensive, and we did do a good job. So it was a great performance with the grit and determination, and it felt like we had turned a corner. It's like, all right, hey, this is finally, we can move on from this. We stopped the bleeding with the poor performances, as you guys can see. You guys can see it here. Since the Monterey Bay game, the loss to Fort Wayne, the loss to Sarasota, the draw against Richmond, which still wasn't great, and then the loss against Spokane, which again I felt we actually played quite well in that game. Not necessarily an undeserved loss, but there were positives in the Spokane game. There were positives in the Richmond game. Not many positives in Sarasota and Fort Wayne. So it felt like, okay, we've turned a corner. We've turned a corner. Things are going to improve. So it was good to see the performance, and I was feeling quite confident moving into this game. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the scary stats from the Forward Madison game. Goodness gracious. We have not traveled well, to say the least. I think we have one win, two draws, and 3 losses on the road so far this season. And I get it, going on the road is difficult, especially when you have a midweek game and then a weekend game. So obviously we play Wednesday, and then we go into the weekend game against Forward Madison.
Real talk. You're already paying for insurance. Question is, are you overpaying? KJO Insurance covers Idaho and the Pacific Northwest, and they'll shop around to get you the best coverage for less. As you can see on their website, they have plenty of options for coverage. So please DM at KJO Insurance on Instagram with keyword pitchside, or call 208-833-4800 and tell them Elias and Kyle sent you. Now back to today's episode.
Is here, so apologies for that. So we're going to be on the right since we are the away team. So we saw the return of Jake Dengler into his starting role, and this is my assumption of what was going to happen. Jake was going to move into the middle. Josh Yarrow would move on to the right side of central defense, with Johansson maintaining his place, and then Jonathan Ricketts with the absence of both Nick Moon and Blake Bodley. Obviously, we have to kind of have wingbacks by committee. Jonathan has played fullback before. He's he is definitely a marauding fullback and center back. We've seen him earlier in the season. It's like, what the heck? Where's Jonathan going? He's up and down the pitch. So we know that's a role that he can fill. playing as a right-footed defender on the left side will always be kind of interesting. It leads him being able to defend against inverted wingers quite well. So it was a lineup where it's like, okay, so we have Philip and Musa playing together as a double pivot, and we had Toomey and Omar. So it seemed like, okay, we've set up more to be a counter-attacking team. We lose Luan's profile, or excuse me, we lose Thomas's profile and we add Luan, where it's like, okay, he's a bit more of a backboard, just a bigger player, able to feed off of crosses more, which we did see him do. And in all honesty, not many players can hold their head up high after this game. I thought Luan is definitely a player who could, for sure. And I thought he played quite well. It was a really good finish to make it 1-1 after we had gone down 1-0. It was honestly quite a, I wouldn't necessarily say even first half, given that without Blake and without Nick, it's in so much of our attack and our ball progression, everything goes through the wings. Everything goes through the wings, so we lose. Johansson is much more of a winger versus a wing back. So having his profile definitely meant that we could still attack, and we had our moments. We had our moments in the first half, but the profiles that we had out there, I thought we're going to be able to counterattack more than we did. And obviously in the first half, I can go ahead and show you. Oh man, the first half, no shots, no nothing. While Forward Madison had 8 shots. They forced Jonathan into 1 save. They had 7 corners. They had 200. This is fairly surprising in the amount of passes, but it's just we are not a long ball team. We still, despite the fact that we had players, number one, Luan could be a backboard, and then Omar, we kind of had when it comes to a striking tandem, we had the gazelle and the giraffe, or the gazelle and the elephant, or whatever terminology people want to say when it comes to. But that's usually how partnerships. Think of like Peter Crouch and whoever Peter Crouch would partner with. You have the taller striker playing with the smaller striker, just to change the profiles that center backs have to go up against. So it felt like, okay, we have 2 very different profiles. Luan is definitely not someone who's going to stretch play, but he can help bring players in different ways. In that he is a little bit taller, he is fairly physical, but he's not going to stretch play at all. But that's why Omar's there. That's why Johansson is there, and Toomey can also do that. We see him leading the press, and he's kind of the tip of the spear from time to time. So I believe if we look at the counter-attacking map, is still fairly similar to what we usually do. But if we look at the lineup, we can look at our positioning, and it definitely still felt like Toomey. So Luan actually did lead the line, with Toomey dropping in just behind, and Omar. This is a little surprising when not after watching the game, but before the game, I would have thought that I would have seen this number 9 here. This would have been more Toomey versus Luan. But Luan was trying, because we were going a little bit more direct in this game and more counterattacking. Luan was trying to be the backboard for us for sure. And unfortunately, in that first half, it just didn't work. Obviously, we didn't have a shot, and that's something that I think we can be a little critical of Luan so far this season, is that he's just not getting shots off when we're not feeding in the ball well. We're just not. Something needs to happen, in that we need to get Luan in better positions to shoot, because the finishing quality is there. He's just not getting the shots like Thomas can, it seems like, or to me, it feels like those 2 guys, whether they're just more mobile or more active or more just anticipating where the ball's going to be better than Luan is, but he's just not getting the shots like those 2 players are. And so, yeah, that first half performance with 0 shots is definitely just, you don't expect that from an AC Boise team. So disappointing, to say the least. And so we go 1-0 down, a phenomenal header by Forward Madison, for sure. It was a shot that Jonathan's never going to save. Jonathan's never going to get there. It's just a good header, in all honesty. Can't really it was a good moment of quality. And then you could say the same for Luan when we scored the equalizer. I believe in the 49th minute, we came out of the gate fairly well. In the second half, as you guys can see from the attack momentum bar, we had some really good moments. So in the second half there, Luan scores off of a set piece, which it was flicked on. I need to recall who flicked the ball on for Luan. Let's see here. Who did they give it to? Apologies, everybody. They're actually not showing that it was flicked on by anybody when it comes to the assists over on the side, which it definitely seemed like an AC Boise player flicked it on to Luan. But no matter what, he had a great header. It was a phenomenal finish, and that's what you want to see. It was our first shot on target, and our first shot, I believe, in that game. So Luan again, I felt like he's arguably the only player. Again, the effort was there. The effort was there. We still looked flat-footed, but I'm never going to say that someone isn't playing with heart, but we definitely looked flat, and I think everybody could see it. Everyone could see that we looked flat, and obviously when the second half snowballed around the 60th minute, it was it wasn't going to stop from there. And I might need to go back and look at a few of these goals just because it's it was quite something. Once Forward Madison got rolling, we just absolutely could not stop them, and so it was something where we just got spread really thin. I think Carmichael was the player who came on and really changed things because right before they scored, Dennis had a really good shot because we did make some substitutions at halftime, I believe, or right about halftime. So we made three. So Thomas came on for Musa, Johansson was replaced by Keegan, and Omar was replaced by Dennis. So it definitely seemed like we're trying to change the profiles a little bit. Keegan was going to add. We're going to Jonathan move back to the right. Keegan's going to go on the left, add a little bit more overall defensive stability on the wings. Omar wasn't super involved in that first half, so Thomas was going to bring on a little bit better, I think, box presence is what we were going to anticipate. And then Dennis, obviously, we all know what Dennis can do. He almost scored. He forced the keeper into a decent save in that second half, and Dennis is just phenomenal. I think he's just tired. I think he works so hard. If I said who's the player that fights for the badge more than anyone on this team, I would say Dennis. He's always out there giving his all, and I think he's just a little bit tired because we expect so much of him. And so Dennis definitely put his all in there for sure. But for the goal that Forward Madison did score, their second goal in the 65th minute, this is something where Philip has become a bit of a contentious point. More recently, Philip obviously started off the season phenomenally well. He, Elias and I had made some comments about as Philip Mayaka goes, so does AC Boise in that. He is the engine room in the midfield. He is an absolute destroyer. His defensive work rate cannot be denied. His defensive contributions cannot be denied. But it seems like in the last few weeks, a lot of at least some of his defensive contributions have been him cleaning up his own mess, where it's either he dribbles into trouble in our defensive third or defensive half, or he has a bad giveaway. Philip is someone who definitely keeps his shots fairly short, and he's a pass and move because he is very mobile. He is everywhere. He's an absolute Energizer bunny. He's our midfield destroyer. And he obviously, there's a reason he drafted so high in the MLS draft, and he is an extremely quality player. But he has become a bit of a people are starting to discuss things about how do we unlock him better, and how do we avoid, because it seems like the mistakes are getting more and more in possession, not necessarily out of possession, because again it seems like he can recover so well, but this was definitely not a game in which he covered himself in glory, and that's going to happen. That's everyone's going to have those types of games for sure. And you can see here, I think, some of the dribbles. Yeah, he had one attempt, Possession loss. I think the biggest thing here is the possession lost. Obviously, he carries the ball a ton, but losing possession that much is difficult. And I think, yeah, it is tough when he dribbles so much, but he can kind of dribble into trouble. And I think in this second goal that we allow in the 65th minute, it's just a cross from our defensive left, so on Jake Kroll's side, and Yarrow obviously has to stretch to try and attack because the cross went to the far post, and Philip, you know. The guy is behind him, so it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to put blame. We kind of just got caught high. Jake Kroll was playing very, very high because this is a moment. If you look at our attacking momentum, it was a moment where we were doing well, or at least starting to have some decent possession. So pressing back, where you're pressing back. So Jake Dingler covers. Jake Kroll is lagging a little bit far behind. Then Carmichael, he had spread himself out to the wing, so Jake has to go. Jacob Kroll has to follow him. Jake Kroll has to also go out, kind of. He kind of just fills into this half space. He kind of gets caught in this Bermuda Triangle. Jake Dengler is going towards the near post. Josh Yarrow is covering the far post, and then Philip Mayaka is just kind of at the penalty spot. And this guy is behind him, so he's between Jonathan Cleaver and Philip. So that cross goes to the back post. It's over Josh's head, but that guy at the back post is able to just dink it back into the middle at right around the penalty spot. Jake Dingler was at the near post. Josh Yarrow was at the far post. Jacob Kroll was all the way out trying to cover the guy at the wing. And so no one had tracked. The player ended up scoring. So do we call it ball watching? I'm not sure. The guy just found space, and again, that's what strikers do. That's what good attackers do. They find space, and that ended up being 2-1. Great finish, little kind of like scissor kick, and his failed front flip. But that was in the 66th minute, and then in the 69th they had scored again, and this was unfortunately, Jake Dingler, as you can see here, did not have his best game in that, yes, this is the 69th minute, so Jake, again, we had started to press back a little bit more. And the funny part is, so right after they score, we had good possession, good pressure, and then so in the 70th minute, Jake Dingler passes intercepted, and it seemed like we were still in a decent defensive shape, and it was just dinked over the top. Wonderful pass, wonderful chip, and so Jonathan Cleaver did get chipped by Carmichael again. So he had been subbed on at like the 55th minute or 60th minute, and within 2 minutes he had or within 5 minutes of being subbed on, he had a goal and an assist. Great chip. I mean, it was a ball over the top, and he just outran him. He's just faster. Jake Dingler being as big as he is and being as defensively astute as he pace is not his strongest suit. Again, he's pretty fast for a big guy, but it's still, I wouldn't say is top quality. So Jonathan did get chipped because obviously Jonathan's gonna come out a little bit to try and cover that ground. So it was a great finish. It was a phenomenal finish by Carmichael, and so then Boise's down 3-1, and I believe we had made it 4-1 again before Dennis's shot, but this was another really, really, really bad giveaway by Jake Dingler. And again, he's been phenomenal for us all season, but when Jonathan Cleaver, sometimes when we have a goal kick, he'll just kick it straight to Jake, and he'll let Jake progress the ball forward, either with the long ball or he'll pass it straight to midfield. Usually, if Charlie's there, it'll go to Charlie because Charlie is our best in possession midfielder, best passing quality on the team. Maybe Jacob Kroll should be the one passing out of the center back or out of the defense, but Jake Dingler has been taking that responsibility. It was a giveaway immediately on the outside of the 18-yard box, and we just weren't able to cover it. Philip Mayaka put in a tackle, but they got around him, and it was a goal to Jonathan Cleaver's right. So we're down 4, and then we are down 4-1. And yeah, it was definitely a punch. It was a punch in the mouth for sure. And we try to fight back, and again, Dennis shows his quality. This is the shot from outside the box where he hits the post. Great shot, and unfortunately just didn't go in. And this is a game where it was not our day, to say the least. So we're down 4-1. Game, you can kind of write it off, and we had made a few more. I think we had maybe subbed on a few more folks. Yeah, so Charlie came on for Toomey in the 65th right as things got bad. Hayden Sargis came on for Jonathan, and then it is 5-1. It definitely seems like Forward Madison maybe got away with a push on Josh. Just the amount of separation it seemed unnatural, unnatural amount of separation there. And so, yeah, it was. I believe Nate Miller had said that this was the worst technical performance from a team he's ever had, and it's hard to argue with that. These things happen, and we did have a few comments on the story asking for some participation from you all. And again, we do thank you for all participating. Either we are on the Riverguard Discord, and we are also obviously on Instagram, so that's where we ask for most of our participation from you folks. And we did have a few comments, and so from ML Daniel 1525, we traveled halfway across the country having played midweek, and they didn't. Yes, yeah, absolutely. But that can't be. That's the reason we lost. You could say, but it can't be the excuse every single week when we have to travel. We still have to put in a performance, and that just wasn't there at all. And so yes, I get it. That's a reason. That is a contributing reason, but it can't be our excuse. And so even when I forget which team traveled here, but I think it was Fort Wayne or even Sarasota, and when we came out in those games and looked flat-footed, what was the excuse then? It just wasn't. I agree with you to a point, and your observation isn't wrong in any way, but it just can't be the excuse. And it's like, oh, we traveled, so I get why we lost. It's like, no, like, we have to play away games, but we can't. One win from 6 away games is not cutting it. That is not good enough. And so we have to find a way to win away from home for sure. Courtney Bowling, maybe that we need to switch it up a bit in the approach and layout for a team matchup. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people have been talking about a change in formation, but that is kind of tough. That is kind of tough given the profiles that we have now. This may have been a good game to do it without Nick Moon, without Blake Bodley, or 2 wingbacks. Probably, we have other profiles that can play there, like Keegan Euler. He's the most like-for-like change, but he didn't start. So why did we try to put, round pegs in square holes, or square pegs in round holes? Like, why did we try to force profiles into positions that they're not natural in, just to keep the formation? So I think that's something that definitely frustrated some folks for sure. It definitely frustrated folks for sure in this game. We did have quite a few participation in Discord, just in general, with the discussion after the game. People were, I think the first few words is like, let's just go ahead and skip the Forward Madison match. It never happened. If I remember correctly, we had the weekend off. Yeah, and I think that's definitely a good thing for people to talk about. It's like, all right, hey, short memory, water off a duck. Like we have to respond. We have to rebound from this as quickly as possible, and we can do that. So it's definitely something that we need to move past, learn lessons from it, because there are lessons to be learned, and just it's a tough one. It's a tough one for sure. Roger with a nice comment. So the win at home, we needed it. Yes, absolutely we do. Jake Dengler and Charlie being back was huge. Again, Jake Dengler is our best out defender. Charlie's arguably our best distributor of the ball. Not when it comes to his passing qualities, him and Jake Kroll I would say are our best ball progressors when it comes to passing versus ball carrying for sure. Yeah, the loss of Forward Madison on the next. Yeah, you got us. It happened. I don't give an F. I would like to not see the 3-5-2 if we don't have wingbacks. I agree, and obviously attributed to different things. But yeah, we move on. Let's go. Exactly. We do move on. Robert James McIntosh. It's okay. We're just in a dark, sad part of the movie. Soon it'll turn. It'll soon be turned around with some motivational session, and we win it all. Yeah, I mean that's definitely if this season was a movie, and you always want that. Um, Gretchen, it's a good life lesson. Of course, sports kind of lessons. Some of the biggest losses lead to the biggest successes. Yes, you always again in movies it's always darkest before the dawn, and I think one thing about AC Boise supporters is it seems like everyone has been really really positive, and they want to see the bright spot, and but sometimes sports also doesn't have a bright spot. You think of Corpus Christi struggling so bad, and you think of some teams. The World Cup is going on now, and I don't know if Haiti's gonna have a bright spot. They just lost to Scotland 1-0, and then Curacao loses 7-1. Some of those teams the smaller teams who they're probably not gonna have a movie moment. So we can't just expect things to turn around. The players have to do it themselves, and they have to pick themselves up and make that happen, force it through. And Nate Miller, it seems like Nate Miller is a motivator in his own way. He's obviously quite spiky. He's gotten more than a few yellow cards, and I'm sure his halftime team talks are a sight to behold. And some players are going to respond well to that, and hopefully this is a team. Obviously this is his team, he's picked these players. Hopefully he knows that they can respond well to that. We don't know that for sure, but at the end of the day it's his job to get these players winning again. And that's something, we're kind of that bubble team in the playoffs right now. We're sitting again, I think, at points per game. We're still sitting in that eighth, ninth kind of area of right on the bubble of the playoffs. Right now we're in fifth. If we want to look, we can look at the standings right now. And yes, we're in sixth, and it's surprising to see teams like AV Alta creeping up there, but their form is phenomenal. They've taken 12, 13 points from their last 15 available. Well, again, we've taken 4 from our last 15. And so, we're in a tough spot. And this is definitely a demoralizing loss. And especially after it felt like we had a good performance against, a weird performance against Richmond, but something to build off of and progress from. So I'm sure I need to go back and reread Nate Miller's comments, but this was a tough one. This is a tough one, and we and then we have Union Omaha coming to town on the 20th, and so obviously they're in first in our league, and for a good reason. They've had weird little dips against Charlotte, a really, really, really obviously in good form Charlotte, as you can see from my screen here. They've taken 15 from 15. And then they also had the loss to Sarasota, which again Sarasota is in good form. They've taken 9 points from their 15. So no, they've done well. So we have a tough little 2 stretch coming because we have 1 Knox. We are away. No, we have 1 Knox at home. So we have 2 home games in a row. And so that is definitely going to be something where hopefully we can pick up some performances against 2 top of the table teams, 2 teams that are still projected to host playoff games. So yeah, this is a tough one. This is a tough one to swallow against Forward Madison. Probably the thing that annoys me the most about Forward Madison is hearing whatever Flamingo call some of their fans were doing that whole time. You could just hear it like the almost like vuvuzela type vibes that you get from the World Cup in South Africa. I just hear like these weird flamingo noises, whatever these folks were making, and that was grinding my gears a little bit watching that game, but that's all right. So that was almost more annoying than the performance and the result of that game. But yeah, we really need Blake if we want to keep with this system moving forward. Obviously, we need to be full strength against Union Omaha, and Blake is the heartbeat of this team, along with but that's the thing, you get tied to these players, and quite a few of them take on, they personify this team and this community. And so Blake and Phillip and Charlie Adams and Jake Dangler, we have so many fan favorites, and I know they're going to fight for the badge, they're going to fight for the community, but yeah, we'll see how they're able to turn things around against top of the table opposition over the next 2 game weeks, and hopefully Nate Miller and his staff can. I don't know if this is something where they're gonna pivot, or if they're gonna stick with it and make us all feel a little insane, because again, the definition of insanity is trying the same thing again and again and expecting a different result, and we've had so many hit and miss results. So I don't think he's going to abandon the system given the profiles that we have. I expect the next game to still be a 3-5-2 and or a 3-4-2-1, given that we usually only have one true striker on the pitch at the same time. So, on to the next, and we're always going to be out there supporting AC Boise. We love this team. This team, obviously supports the community, and this is kind of the first time I've seen more critical responses at a pretty consistent level. So, and I think people want to win. So hopefully we can start winning again. It's nice to see 1W and over the last 5, but we'd like to see a little bit more green. That's for sure. We'd like to look like Charlotte. That's for dang sure. When it comes to the form table, we don't want to be looking like FC Naples and AC Boise at this current time. So hopefully we can turn things around and start seeing some wins again. We are better at home, so it's nice that we are facing Union Omaha and 1 Knox at home over these next 2 games, and hopefully 4 points would be. I'd be more than happy with 4. Obviously 0 or 2 or 3, not great. So hopefully we can avoid some draws and get some wins. So thanks for listening, everybody. Again, please continue to interact with us. Send us DMs on Instagram and follow us on all the different platforms. And thank you again for listening. Thanks for watching, and we will see you before the 1 Knox game.
That's all for today's episode. If you enjoy the show, make sure to like, comment, share with a friend, and make sure you're following the show wherever you listen. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube for all updates and future content to come. If you want to help support the pod and get access to exclusive content, early episodes, and bonus perks, head over and check out our Patreon. It truly helps us keep this thing growing. Thanks again for listening. Thanks for being part of the community, and we'll catch you in the next one.